I'm Tom Brokaw. Tonight on Upfront with Tom Brokaw, we'll be looking at the different aspects of the Credit Card Act of 2009. Now let's take a look at a segment I did with co-host Katie Couric. Tonight, we'll take a look at the failure and passage of the Credit Card Act of 2009.
Before the passage of this act, markets have been flooded with low credit standards. Lenders read an estimated $21 billion in bad loans in 2008. Companies were laying off tens of thousands of workers. Lenders began shunning customers already in debt and cutting credit limits for existing cardholders.
The depth of the financial crisis has shocked a credit-hooked nation into rethinking its habits. That segment is what brought me down to the Capitol to meet up with Representative Carolyn Maloney from New York. Let's take a look. I'm standing here at the Capitol with Representative Carolyn Maloney from New York. Representative, why did you feel it necessary to introduce this piece of legislation?
Thanks for having me, Tom.
Of course.
To put it simply, this legislation levels the playing field between consumers and credit card companies by banning practices that have been determined to be unfair, deceptive, and anti-competitive by the Federal Reserve.
All right. Representative, can you tell us a few of the key components in the bill?
Well, Tom, I will touch on the six that I feel are the most important. I believe that cardholders deserve protection against arbitrary interest rate increases. Cardholders who pay on time should not be penalized. They also deserve the right to set limits on their credit. Card companies should not impose these excessive fees on cardholders. Congress should provide better oversight of the credit card industry, and they should limit credit cards to teens. This bill will essentially guide us in the right direction.
All right. Thank you for that insight. Eventually, in 2009, Representative Maloney's legislation would pass, but not before failing in the 110th Congress. I've convened a panel to discuss the failure and passage of this bill. Let's take a look. Tonight, we'll be discussing the failure and passage of the Credit Card Act of 2009. Tonight, I'm joined by Paul Bagala, Chris Matthews, and Fareed Zakaria. Paul, what are your thoughts?
Well, Tom, there was a couple key changes in the 2 years in which it was introduced by Representative Maloney, failed in 2008, and then came back in 2009 to be passed. One of the main changes was clearly that President Bush was in office whenever it was introduced the first time. Then Barack Obama came in with a wave of congressmen, congresswomen all being elected to shift the gridlock region according to the pivotal politics method, shifted it to the left, and switched the veto points at the same time. So when it failed, the Democrats had to have it so that the president couldn't have a veto sustained.
So what you're saying is that this bill required the shift to the left in order to pass?
Yes. And then that's precisely what this election in 2008 happened, and it changed in between.
Well, my train of thought is that what it comes down to is the medium voter theorem. Pretty much this legislation is going to be coming out of Congress pretty much of the preferences to the medium voter, and we see that with the amendment that was attached by Senator Tom Coburn, an amendment on concealed handguns in national parks, and we saw that particular amendment got a lot of support from moderate Democrats and moderate Republicans, and so I think that quite possibly allowed for more support for this particular piece of legislation.
If I could interject, I think that what these two fine gentlemen are missing is that this bill was brought about because of a crisis. You can think of it in the sense of like a theory developed by Brian Jones from the University of Texas. Punctuated equilibrium, just like evolution, doesn't happen gradually. It happens gradually, and then there's big changes. You can think of policy is made that way. Before this, we were getting gradual, albeit really slow changes to credit card reform. But then you had the crisis in 2008, the financial crisis. The banking institutions were on the brink of collapse. That crisis made it possible that you had this punctuated change. Hence a punctuated equilibrium. So I think that that's a theory that explains best why this policy was able to pass.
So major events cause major policy changes.
Yes.
We interrupt this program, political talking action figures. Now back to your program.
I would say that we are over complicating things. If we look at the record, the day that the bill was supposed to be taken up in the Senate moved to recess for roughly 3 weeks and they were supposed to meet the day a few days after the election, because the theory of members of Congress are single-minded seekers of re-election. Instead of doing what they were supposed to do, which was pass laws for the benefit of the public, they went out and were more focused on getting re-elected. And when they came back, it was a lame duck session. Usually nothing happens during a lame duck session. The bill, no further action was taken on the bill, and the bill died. It wasn't until the 111th Congress, when the bill was introduced a few days after the start of the session, that action was taken by the House, and then a few months later by the Senate, until it eventually passed. So I would say that the failure of the bill the first time around was because congressmen are single-minded seekers of re-election.
I'm Tom Brokaw, and you've been taken up front.
So, Sarah, what kinds of credit cards do you use?
Oh, you know, Katie, just all of them, really. I mean, the ones right in front of me.
Do you list any?
You know, local ones, the ones from Alaska. I mean, all of them, Katie.
How can you relate to the average American going through the credit crisis?
I live in Alaska. I can see Wells Fargo from my house, directly out my bedroom window.